Silence, all stand and remain standing until the conclusion of the reading of the proclamation. Ladies and gentlemen, the proclamation. All persons having any business before this honourable court, please draw nigh, give your attendance, and you shall be heard. God save the Queen.
I'd like to welcome you all to another virtual admission ceremony at the Supreme Court to celebrate your admission as lawyers of this court. Present with me on the bench today to my right is Justice Bell, who's the President of the Court of Appeal, and Justice Ward, who's the Chief Judge at Equity. To my left is Justice Hoban, who is the Chief Judge of Common Law, and Justice Payne, who is a Judge of the Court of Appeal. In what is correctly called the upper bench, or might otherwise be called the dress circle, is Justice Garling, who is a Judge of the Common Law Division, Justice Hamill, who is also a Judge of the Common Law Division, and Justice Henry, who is a Judge of the Equity Division. To my left on the upper bench is Justice Campbell, who is a Judge of the Common Law Division, Justice Adams, who is a Judge of the Common Law Division, and Justice Kavanagh, who is also a Judge of that division. The number of judges who are sitting today is a recognition of the importance of these occasions, both to everyone who's here or who's listening online, and for that matter to the court itself. They are very important days, and we do regret that we're unable to do the full ceremony, but we hope this is somewhat of a substitute for you. As we gather physically dispersed, I'd like to recognise the various traditional lands on which we meet. This ceremony is streamed from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging, of the lands on which we all work and live. As we celebrate your admission to the legal profession, I recognise the role which law played in the traditional society of Australia's First Nation peoples, the first legal system of our country. I acknowledge that our laws fail to recognise the cultural heritage and rights of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people for many decades, and the dispossession and disempowerment this caused. In these unusual times, you have all completed your admission formalities remotely. You swore an oath or made an affirmation that you will truly and honestly conduct yourselves in the practice of a lawyer of the Supreme Court of New South Wales, and that you will faithfully serve as such in the administration of the laws and usages of this state according to the best of your knowledge, skill and ability. Today, your admission has been recorded on the Supreme Court Roll of Lawyers. Today is a day for celebration. Your admission marks the culmination of your legal studies to date, when you can look back with pride and relief on those caffeine-fuelled nights spent trying to memorise your carefully tabbed and annotated case summaries with the aid of an entire rainbow of highlighters, the many hours in lectures spent analysing carbolic smoke balls, eggshell skulls and snails in bottles, and just when you thought your student days were behind you, a few more months squeezing in PLT assessments. There can be no doubt you have all worked extremely hard to get here. But for many of you, these achievements would not have been possible without the support of your family and friends, some of whom are here today, but many of whom will be watching remotely. They have been there through the seemingly endless years of study and have also, no doubt, been on the receiving end of your finely polished skills of argument and persuasion. Today is also a day for them to share in your success. I hope you have the time to thank them for their support. In participating in this ceremony today, you have become part of a tradition which dates back to the 12th century, when it first became common for those representing others before courts to swear an oath before being allowed to do so. The first admission ceremony in this court was held almost 200 years ago in 1824. Testament to the enduring nature of these ceremonies, young lawyers just like you were admitted, even during the midst of the Spanish flu and world wars. You have made a commitment to uphold the rule of law, to administer the law competently and with honesty and integrity, as have centuries of lawyers before you. It is out of respect for this long history that we mark your admission to the legal ceremony with the swearing of oaths or making of affirmations, and for that matter, our somewhat strange choice of fashion. As we won't be having a live ceremony this year, I won't be asked, as I usually am after the Christmas ceremony, by some young guest whether we were doing Santa photos after the ceremony. I'm always very sorry to disappoint on that. Now, despite this time-honoured tradition, the ceremony is remarkably unique. Only in the past few months has the Supreme Court of New South Wales started welcoming new cohorts of lawyers into the profession by a virtual ceremony. This is what you could call a pandemic special, and like the pandemic, soon it might be over. You have all made history through your participation in this ancient, yet undoubtedly modern ceremony. Of course, this is not the admission day you've imagined. You'll be more familiar watching cat videos, beauty tutorials, or food hacks on YouTube, rather than your admission ceremony. But believe it or not, it's as strange for you as it is for me. I didn't know what a vlogger was until recently, but I guess I'm now one too. Now, the virtual ceremony does reflect the agility and dedication of the profession you're entering to delivering justice outside a bricks and mortar courtroom. Throughout history, our profession has proved itself adept at change, and never more so than now. We transitioned to a virtual system of justice at a previously unimaginable speed. As you're experiencing right now, dining tables have become the new bar tables, family dogs the new courtroom security, and interrupting children the now rowdy members of the public. This transformation was only possible due to the commitment of the profession to ensuring the wheels of justice continue to turn. This is something for which we should all be immeasurably proud. Of course, this is not the only change that has occurred in the legal profession. For almost 100 years after the first admission ceremony was held in New South Wales, women were not allowed to be admitted. A century later in this state today, more than half of the solicitors with a practicing certificate are women, and many of the most senior positions in the law are held by women, including the Chief Judge of Australia and the Chief Justices of Victoria, Queensland and the Australian Capital Territory. The profession is more diverse than ever before, and this is something we should certainly celebrate. Of course, there is still a long way to go in improving the diversity of our profession. I'm the first to admit that there are more people who look like me in senior positions in the law than look like anyone else in the community. Systemic barriers, inappropriate workplace behaviour and prejudices continue to hinder women and those from diverse cultural and socio-economic backgrounds from fully and equally participating in the legal profession. This is something that must change. Our profession is only as strong as it is diverse. Public confidence in our legal system is founded on the profession serving the entire community, rich or poor, privileged or vulnerable. An inclusive profession also strengthens access to justice by providing culturally and gender-sensitive services. No one, irrespective of their gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, disability or socio-economic background should be left out or left behind from pursuing a career in the law. But when we look at how far we have come, I am confident that these barriers can also be overcome. This is a period of great change in the legal profession. There is an increasing recognition that more must be done to ensure all lawyers have a safe workplace, free from sexual harassment, discrimination and bullying. The normalisation of working from home will make the profession more family-friendly long after the pandemic passes, and recent changes to the Legal Services Award will better protect the well-being of graduate lawyers. I believe that the pace and scale of this change is a cause for great hope. You are becoming lawyers at a time like no other. Our world is reeling from the turmoil of a pandemic which has generated fear and uncertainty, destroyed livelihoods and curtailed movements across suburbs, states and countries. Despite the crisis, the rule of law has not been suspended. In fact, it is now more important than ever. History has taught us that human rights are at their most vulnerable in times of crisis. When significant decisions are necessarily made with great speed and without precedent, parliamentary sessions are suspended and unprecedented powers are given to the executive and their agencies, the role of lawyers in upholding the rule of law is more crucial than ever. The scale and severity of the pandemic has raised complex legal issues that strike at the heart of our democracy and civil liberties. How do we balance public health with the right of freedom of assembly? How do we ensure expanded police powers are used in such a way as to protect the community? How do we enable those fleeing persecution to exercise their right to seek asylum in the face of travel bans and border closures? As lawyers, the commitments you have made today to uphold the rule of law is critical to ensuring that emergency measures balance public health considerations and civil liberties. This balance can only be struck in the environment of contestation and scrutiny by lawyers bringing matters before the courts. Our profession plays an essential role in assuring that emergency measures are transparent, proportionate and applied in a non-discriminatory measure. At the same time, it is more important than ever that we connect the law with its profound human implications. The impact of the law on our lives has never been so pronounced. Lockdowns, border closures and travel bans necessarily impact our freedom of movement and, in the process, our access to and enjoyment of many rights. As lawyers, we have a special responsibility to uphold the rule of law by ensuring that the pandemic does not undermine access to justice. As a profession, we must be vigilant in protecting the rights and dignities of those disproportionately affected by emergency measures. We must ensure that even the most vulnerable have access to quality legal representation and to the full benefit of the law. We do this when we use our legal training to help vulnerable workers navigate their employment rights in times of illness, when we use commercial law as a tool to lighten the pressures on small businesses devastated by the restrictions, and when we help survivors of domestic violence in lockdown with abusive partners access legal services. Our commitment to access to justice requires us to be particularly astute to the injustices facing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. The Black Lives Matter movement has brought the racism, inequality and abuses of power that have haunted our nation for so long to the forefront of public consciousness. This year marks 250 years since Captain Cook first landed in Australia. Despite this significant passage of time, the Black Lives Matter movement has exposed that our criminal justice system remains a tool of injustice for Indigenous Australians, who are one of the most incarcerated people in the world. The Black Lives Matter and Me Too movements present a challenge for our profession to ensure that calls for change do not pass without systemic reforms. As lawyers, we are called upon to ensure that our justice system is in fact for all. This happens when we use our legal training to challenge narratives which sustain injustice, use our advocacy skills to defend unpopular causes or clients, whether outside or inside the courtroom, and use our legal knowledge to educate others and better inform public debate. As a member of the legal profession, you are now in a position of great privilege. You will play a trusted role in some of the most testing times in the lives of others. You will be a confidant, an advisor and an advocate to many. As lawyers, we have a responsibility to use our training and knowledge as a tool of change. This year has shown that there is much for us to defend and strengthen, undo and remake. As the newest members of our profession, you have an unparalleled opportunity to be part of the change for the better. Many of you would have chosen to study law because you wanted to promote human rights, to reform policy or to advocate for the most vulnerable. I urge you today to remember why you decided to study law all those years ago. Irrespective of whether you practice in a commercial firm, a community legal centre, or pursue a career outside the law altogether, I encourage you to use your legal knowledge and capacity for critical thinking for the public good. Today, you have joined a profession whose support and collegiality will prove invaluable. It is easy to feel isolated whilst we as a profession continue to work predominantly, although less and less, from home. Remember that even when you are working from home or on your own in chambers, you are not working alone. Although you might find it hard to believe, I was admitted quite a long time ago. I lost my first case and I lost many more after that. Throughout my 35 years in practice, I could always count on the other barristers in my chambers to share my disappointment at the unfairness of the verdict, the sly tactics of opposing counsel, and most often, I regret to say, the obtuseness of the judge or judges. Although there are many judges on the court, sitting on the court with me today, There are only a couple of them who I think were there before me, so they're the only two who could be included in the latter comment. I hasten to add I do not include either of them in it. Finally, too many lawyers still feel there is a stigma talking about mental health. Looking after your mental health is not something to be ashamed of. There will be times in your career when your work weighs on you to an unhealthy degree, when you feel disadvantaged, disheartened or overwhelmed. When this happens, you should take the time to seek professional help and turn to the enduring things in your life, like your family, parents or friends. On behalf of all the judges of the Supreme Court, I once again congratulate you on your admission and welcome you to the legal profession. The Court will now adjourn.
All stand. This honourable court is now adjourned. God save the Queen. Congratulations, and that's the conclusion of the ceremony.